What's going on, everybody? Today we're talking news, notes, sit starts, lineups, waiver strategies. We're throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you, and we're going to start doing that right now. All right, so I've said it. It's Bob's Three-Toe Warriors, Studio 1329 with Word on the Street, Season 1, Episode 42. Got some great guys on the show with me. We'll just start right there. We'll go around the room and everybody tell the listeners where you can be found and your Twitter handle, what you got going on, all that good stuff. Go first, Mr. Addison.
Oh, all right. I am Addison Hayes. I'm a writer, programmer, all that stuff at DLF. You can find all my work and all my regular tweets at AmazeHayes_.
All right. Kick it over to you, Mr. Mike.
All right, Mike Fiala. I am a writer over at the Pregame HQ, and you can find me on Twitter at mfiala2001. Sorry for all the vowels. Italians just kind of do that, but we have MFAIELLA 2001 over on Twitter. Love to catch up with you there.
All right. Over to you, Mr. Detroit Beastie.
Oh, me, I'm up. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Detroit Beastie. All my DFS and seasonal content at dfscheatsheet.com. And now all my rankings and projections week to week and seasonal can now be found on Fantasy Pros as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I am Bob's Three-Toed Warriors. I can be found on the Twitter at Bob's Three-Toed, on YouTube at Bob's Three-Toed Warriors, and Facebook Word on Streets Fantasy Football Group. So shows are now Tuesday mornings, Thursday mornings, Friday mornings, and the replay of the live stream, which is Tuesday night, is on Wednesday morning. So we moved that from Saturday, give y'all some inline stuff going on. So lots of stuff going on, and we have a ton of information to cover to get you guys ready for your fantasy seasons. And that's starting in how many days? 2 days. 2 days till real fantasy football. And if you're listening to this on the replay, it's tomorrow. So, all right.
Yes.
So let's get right into the news here. Let's talk about it. If it matters, if it doesn't matter. So we got the first piece, which is the Saints and Kamara extremely close to a new extension. Anybody got a little take on that? As far as fantasy impact wise goes, anybody think it matters, doesn't matter?
So I think, honestly, I don't think this matters nearly as much as the report of him getting epidurals in his back during the preseason. I mean, here's a guy who said he wasn't going to hold out. I've never held out. Like, he's made those statements. He did the 3 days of practice when he was injured, taking time off from the facility. But once he came back, I never had any concern about his week 1 availability. So this report is kind of in line with what I expected. As long as he's healthy, all 16 games, big season for Kamara.
Sure. I'm pretty good with that myself. I would definitely be a little more concerned if it did get a little bitter in the front office / locker room, however that transition happens. But yeah, hopefully he's happy and plays and balls out. AJ Dillon expected to be Green Bay's RB3 in early 2020. Any kind of surprise here, really, or?
No, I think they have to say that kind of stuff, especially now, given the fact that, like Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, they've been there for a few seasons. They've been their guys, their 1-2 punch. And so it'd kind of be a slap in the face to those guys, especially Aaron Jones, who had a phenomenal year last year, to just say, A.J. Dillon, we just drafted him. He's climbed the depth chart. We've buried everybody. It's just not a good look for the organization. And it sets a precedent in the locker room. And for the young kid in Dillon, like, we're not going to hand you anything. This is Green Bay.
Sure.
This is the NFL. You got to work for this stuff, kid.
All right. Anybody no differences? All right. Jaguars list.
Nope.
Jaguars list James Robinson as team starting RB.
Yeah, that one's crazy to me. Go ahead. Why do you love it?
No, I love it because that roster, especially their backfield, it's filled with Thompson, Robinson, the rookie, and Zigbo. And while Raquel Armstead is on the COVID list again. So to me, I find that exciting for fantasy purposes, DFS and seasonal, right? because this time in the year, most of our drafts are done. People are playing the waiver wire game. They're spending an exorbitant amount of money on, Bryce Love or Antonio Gibson if he wasn't drafted. And then I come in and I can sneak in a waiver claim and I can add James Robinson for $1 and feel like I'm set for the year. So it's just a weird personal excitement that I feel for a kid like that. And if you own him, obviously you're not going to start him because you didn't draft him, and if you did, you took how many other stud running backs ahead of him. So I just find it exciting for him, for an organization like that, and we'll see what he's made of on Sunday.
Any differing opinions? I have a differing opinion on him, but so my differing, just pointed up. It's like the Brady Bunch. My differing opinion is this team is projected to win. I don't have it in front of me, but I can probably count it on my foot with not a lot of toes, not a lot of games. And so if he is more the running downs back versus Thompson, assuming he stays healthy, the passing is down back, and they're chasing points a good chunk of life for the season, is he going to be worth really spending a lot of fab on? Because a lot of people didn't take him in their draft, so now they're hitting fab for him, that kind of thing. Like, I don't know. If you needed an extra back, go grab him. But I went through my rosters. I couldn't find someone that I was like, I'm going to cut this guy to grab him, I guess is what I'm getting at there. But that was just me. All right.
I know we saw on Twitter, one of the questions came up about James Robinson over Malcolm Brown. And that's where I definitely lean Robinson. Take a guy who might not be completely worthless as opposed to a committee back who isn't going to be in your lineup at any point. So I'm fine with the swinging for the fences, but I think Chenault's going to be the guy who's going to end up being their running back 1 and wide receiver 2 all built into one. I think they're going to line him up all over the field. So I don't think Robinson's going to be somebody who's going to see your lineup, but I agree with Beastie, good for the kid. Good to see his name in lights. I just don't think this has any fantasy impact at all.
I love that because as a Chenault owner in my big IDP dynasty, I own Chenault and I couldn't be more happy. So I own Chenault and Robinson. So I have the whole team covered, huh?
I got the quarterback and the other wide receiver, so I snuck them in quite a few places. So we'll see. I'm hoping for a lot of garbage time, a lot of Blake Bortles out of Minshew. So we'll see. Damian Harris from the Patriots to the IR for 3 or more games. Maybe that makes the backfield more clear in New England, if that is a real thing in New England. Anybody feel any more clear about that backfield, or have a good read on anybody other than maybe James White?
Well, I was going to talk about James White. I couldn't be any more head over heels in love with James White unless he was here next to me, and we were having beers or something. Guy's going to go absolutely nuts this season, but we know it doesn't matter who the other running backs are. White has his defined role. He's the pass catching back. This is kind of good news for Sony Michel owners, if there is good news to be had for Sony Michel owners. Yeah. So I wouldn't pay too much stock in it. I guess the guy, if you wanted to throw a swing for the fences, like he said, is JJ Taylor. If I'm not mistaken, that's his name. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, Taylor didn't even make the team until Harris went on the IR. He was going to practice squad. So, I mean, to me, I think that as much as we want to, throw open our mouth a little bit, Sony's still the play here. Outside of James White, as you guys put already, he has his set role. I mean, but until Cam can show that he's fully back and is going to vulture those 1-yard touchdowns, if they're going to try to save that shoulder by handing it to somebody, it's going to be Sony Michel. Now, you're going to have to live with the Rex Burkhead game because that's how Belichick will roll. There'll be 1 or 2 games where you'll see nothing from Sony and you'll be cursing out Belichick. That's part of owning the Patriots running backs. But when you're talking week in, week out, it's going to be Sony until proven otherwise, whether we like it or not. That's just kind of the way that's going to shape up. And even when Harris comes back, to be quite honest, I don't think that, given these 3 weeks off, I think he's got an uphill climb. Ideally, you have someone better, but I just took Sony in the 14th round of a startup, felt a little dirty about it, but I mean, that's practically stealing at that point, for a guy who's probably going to see, over 200 touches throughout the year. They might not be overly efficient, but hell, we go crazy over Leonard Fournette and his lack of efficiency. What's the difference here? So let's see how it all plays out. But I think this is still Sony's backfield until proven otherwise.
All right. Let's kick it over to one that's probably not as exciting to talk about. That's Trey Burton and the Colts and his knee IR 3 games plus. Anybody have any big takes on that, or is that just I don't know. I'm like, all right, great. I cleaned up at least the tight end scenario over there, but I'm not excited.
Jack Doyle.
I'm ready. Yeah, Jack Doyle, man. I am
Want
ready.
it?
I posted out one of my. There's a hot take. I think it was PFF Sam posted out. Can you give me a hot take for this year? And I said this is something that I've kind of been mulling over all summer. And then with the Trey Burton news that he's going to miss at least 3 games, I think that solidifies. Like you said, Jack Doyle in that tight end 1 slot for Phillip Rivers. We know how much Rivers loves to throw to the tight end position. And my hot take was actually that Doyle finishes as a top 10 tight end this year ahead of guys like Austin Hooper, Mike Gesicki, TJ Hawkinson, a bunch of guys like that. Noah Fant was another one as well, too. I think that while he doesn't have the ceiling that all of those aforementioned guys have on a weekly basis, I think he's going to be a guy similar to what we saw from Darren Waller last year, where he's just going to, 4, 5, 6 catches a game for 50, 60 yards. If he falls into the end zone, that's where he's going to make his money, but he's never really going to kill you. And, in PPR leagues, he's going to be a solid tight end 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I grabbed Doyle in the fishbowl. I think he's perfect for that format because the guy is catching the ball and falling over the first down marker at the very least, right? So bonus points on bonus points there. So, I love him in those types of formats, no question.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. All right. This is probably an easy one. Marcus Mariota, the Las Vegas Raiders, to the IR. Nate Peterman's the backup. Deshaun Kaiser signed to the practice squad. I don't think we're too worried about any of those names, but I think it makes those who are nervous about the starting situation over there feel a little bit better that there's not someone breathing down Carr's neck.
Can I say real quick, in the last 6 months or 8 months of the off season and the podcasts I've done, I've never met or talked to anybody who owns Derek Carr in their fantasy team. So that would make him, as it stands now, that would make him 0.0 owned, in my head. So I can't, you can't speak on what you don't know. And I don't know much about Derek Carr. And certainly I haven't met anybody who knows much about him anyways.
Well, if you're playing in a super flex, he'll be there. I don't think he's got fishbowl. There you go.
He's perfect for that format. Absolutely.
Oh, he was great. He was one of my late round targets. He was going to thrive in this format, but I didn't get him.
So I guess what I always wonder when these situations come up is how Twitter can be in love with Brian Edwards, Darren Waller, Henry Ruggs, and hate Carr. It doesn't make sense. Someone has to throw the ball to him, and it's not going to be Peterman. So, if you love Edwards to be a breakout star, if you think Waller is going to be that stud tight end, you got to at least give Carr a look. And I think he's going to turn out to be a discount, solid quarterback too. And in fishbowl, obviously an absolute dream. The guy's as efficient as they get. But yeah, I can never put that together where people will love all the targets and hate the quarterback simultaneously.
Yeah. I have him down in my projections for 3,500 pass yards, 21, 22 touchdowns. What more do you need from a quarterback taking that late, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Little running game would be nice, but all right. Yeah, so this was kind of mentioned, I think, in the pre-show. Little AP. Supposedly he's going to get plenty of run off the bat. What? AP? Come on. Get out of here. Is that because Swift is not doing so well right now? Is that why they're giving him a little love in the words? And will it really happen?
Well, he has the connection with Bevel, right? So you have that right out of the gate. He's going to be able to come in and know the actual plays. You got Swift dealing with the lower body injury, and then Carry-On, I believe, said that the knee brace is now part of him, and he's part of the knee brace, which is never what you want to hear from a running back. So I think, to be quite honest, as crazy as it sounds to have an aging running back, the only healthy thing you have lining up in the backfield, that's where we're at. I think what you're going to do is see him come along slow with DeAndre Swift, but he's absolutely the play in that backfield. He's the guy you want. Come week 4 or 5, I expect him to be getting the majority of the touches and honestly ending up as probably a low-end RB1, high-end RB2. So I think now's the time to grab him with all this coach speak, but he's your man in that backfield.
Addison gave you a very emphatic yes, sir.
Yes. Yep. My most favorite tweet from the last week, it seems like, is I said that DeAndre Swift is the 2020 version of Miles Sanders last year, where he's going to have a really slow beginning of the season, and then he's going to at the end of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's on a lot of fantasy championships because of the price that you can get him for right now. Or, I don't know, if he's not getting any run the first couple of weeks, people might actually drop him in redraft leagues, just because he's not doing anything. They're going to want to pick up, the next hotness, some wide receiver who goes off for 40 points, like John Ross, whoever the John Ross is this year. Over the first 3 weeks, they're going to drop Swift for that guy. And then, it happened with Kamara in 2017. Who ironically also had Adrian Peterson in his backfield, inhibiting
it felt
him.
very much like that when I heard that message. Very much like that. This is the very first thing I thought of was the death stare on the sideline.
Yeah. So, I mean, Kamara was on waivers in my redraft leagues that year in week 2, week 3, just because he wasn't doing anything. So I think that could happen with Swift again. And I think if you're an owner who's picking up Swift off the waiver wire, you're going to be really, really fortunate. You're going to be happy that you did, because he's going to carry you to some championships.
All right, well, let's slide over to another backfield that has another rookie in it that's getting some love. McVay optimistic about Henderson and his hamstring being there to play. Optimistic doesn't sound good. 4 days before kickoff? I don't know. Maybe it sounds good. Doesn't sound great. So anybody have an opinion on Mr. Henderson, Mr. Aker, Mr. everyone in that backfield?
This backfield's like the definition of week 1. There's a lot of things we don't know. We don't know how it's going to shake out. This backfield is a full fade until proven otherwise, as he said next to me. So who do I want to start from backfield in week 1? Is it Akers because they drafted him high? That doesn't mean anything to my fantasy team, right? Do I want to start Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson? I don't want anything to do with any one of these guys until we see how it shakes out, if it ever does.
Yeah. All right. Here's another hamstring for you. So we go from a young guy with the hamstring that we're okay with to AJ Green with the hamstring. Full go for Sunday, though. He's full go for Sunday. Damn it. Why can't he just sit out and let my Tyler Boyd shares all over the world just explode as they should? Or, maybe he'll take the pressure off Boyd. No, Boyd did fine with Green on the field last season. They just have a lot of wide receivers sitting there ready to chomp at the bit.
Yeah, this just delays T. Higgins is all it does. It does nothing to Boyd. Boyd's going to eat no matter what. What I want to see is Higgins on the field. I don't want to see another tweet about Auden Tate, the preseason darlings. Let's just stop it. This is going to be Boyd and Higgins. And AJ Green is just going to come in, do what he does, play a couple games. And second half of the season, you're going to see Higgins and Boyd going off on this team. I think once Burrow gets his feet underneath them, those are going to be the two guys you want. AJ Green, to me, trade him. Honestly, if he sees a full game week 1, I'd have him on the block in a heartbeat. I just don't see it long term. But this does nothing to Boyd. This is literally just going to slow down Higgins slightly, but it won't fully stop that train.
All right. Here's some news that some people are loving. I don't know if I have Connor on one of my teams, but Connor was today announces the bell cow back with a lot of good backs behind him. It was a very confusing 2 sets of phrases I said there. We got our bell cow. We got a crap load of talent behind him ready to go. So I'm like, all right, what do you mean by that? So if you got Connor, you got him pretty cheap. You got him, what, the 3rd, 4th round this season? Probably closer to the 4th, depending on the league. And you might have just stole some gold there because he could be a top 10 back for you. Anybody different opinion there? Or is that one a pretty simple one? No, good. All right, cool. All right, a couple guys getting paid. We got Hopkins getting paid and negotiating his own deal. I don't think it means anything for fantasy football, but good for him, right?
Wait, he negotiated that?
Correct.
It says something like on his own, did it on his own or something like that. Yeah.
He negotiated $26 million a year.
Negotiated the highest non-quarterback contract in the NFL.
What it said. What it said. I didn't write it. I'm not the source.
No agent payout, nothing. He made a fortune.
Yeah, it was like 40-something guarantee, 54 and a half or something like that. That's 27 mil a year. Golly.
Yeah, that's crazy talk, right? So okay, if anything, does that mean that he should be getting more targets, not just air raid spreading it out, or just thanks for letting me pay you so much, we're gonna give it to everybody?
Yeah, Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to that. It's good on him for doing that. He looks like a very smart, educated young man, but it's not going to change anything. He's still a stud wide receiver.
Okay. Kareem Hunt also got paid, and he got paid pretty decent for being the not even primary running back on the field, or is he? But any thoughts on Kareem Hunt in this backfield? Most people were drafting him with a little standalone value to begin with. Anybody got a feeling on Kareem Hunt getting paid and on the field playing?
I mean,
No.
Kareem Hunt was he was the bargain out of the backfield anyway. He was the guy you wanted in the 6th round as opposed to Chubb in the 2nd before this happened. The only thing that I find interesting is this could set up a trade for Cleveland in the next year. I mean, this could make him tradable. I don't think you should be burning all your Chubb shares. I still don't see that they're going to both be in the backfield for the next 2 years. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. The news is definitely what does this do to Nick Chubb versus what did this do for Kareem Hunt, right? So now Kareem Hunt, including this year, 2020 to 2022, is now making more money than Nick Chubb and is probably going to be the running back too. And I guarantee you Chubb's not going to be a big fan of that, especially being a free agent after next season. So I could see potentially a holdout, like you said, maybe a trade and sign kind of deal here. But then it would be really interesting, though, too, is if the Browns are able to trade Chubb or let him walk or whatever, they now have Kareem Hunt, who has shown that he could be an elite running back as a starter, as a bell cow in this league for $6 million a year. So I don't know if that's going to mean anything for Kareem Hunt if he sees that Chubb's going away and he's now going to be the guy, if he's going to want more money to compensate for being the guy.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he's already kind of done a prove it kind of thing already. You know, he hasn't fully been away from the law over the past year, but from my knowledge, at least to this point, he hasn't kicked any more women. But that's so we'll see. We'll see. I think this is really interesting for Chubb, for a lot of people, especially dynasty owners who are like, well, when Kareem Hunt leaves next year, you know, Chubb's a full go, and now that's not the case. So,
all right. Does Brandon Cooks have a concussion in his quadricep? Does anybody know that? I'm not practicing due to a quad injury still, so I haven't heard he was completely held out yet from playing the game. But if he doesn't play this Sunday, I know a couple guys right here on this screen in front of me are all over Will Fuller this weekend in their DFS and in the regular leagues. It sounds like.
This is the first I've heard of Cooks not practicing because of a hamstring or a quadricep injury? Quadricep injury. Okay. Those linger. Cooks, I completely flipped the script on Cooks. I judged a book by its cover. I said like a month or two ago on another broadcast where I judged a book by its cover, and he's been pretty solid in terms of playing time. The concussions bug me, but in terms of Will Fuller, he's a guy who Twitter's been overloaded with Will Fuller. I have to say I posted something about Will Fuller because it was all over the place. And the consensus comment was, well, if he plays 16 games, he's going to be a top. He's not going to play 16 games. So just
Mike shaking his head, hell no.
Well, if I win $1 million tomorrow, I'll have $100 million. You know, just because you say it doesn't make it true. The most Will Fuller thing to do, as I've seen, is for him to catch 3 touchdowns on Thursday and then not do another thing the rest of the season. So this doesn't change my opinion on Will Fuller. It's just Will Fuller is Will Fuller. You get what you can from him.
Yeah, I mean, I got the one-time usage. Scott Fish is the 500. Rob Norton's putting together the Baby Bowl, which is, you know, no draft, one-time use players. That's where Fuller's perfect. You know he's playing tomorrow. At this point, he hasn't got injured in the practice, which is fascinating. So when Will Fuller's there, you put him on the field. But as you said, expecting 16 games out of Will Fuller is, you know, very similar to expecting 16 out of AJ Green at this point. It's not going to happen. When he explodes, get something for him. But if you get those one-time usage this Thursday against the Chiefs, is perfect. He's wheels up for this one game, no question.
And if Cooks is out, it's even nicer for him. Or is it? More than he's the main man and Cooks isn't there. So, all right, time to move on to some sad news. And I don't have any music for this, but I should. And that's Von Miller. Von Miller possibly out for the season. I'm not laughing. I'm crying. Ankle injury, probable surgery coming. So we'll see what it all means. It can't be good for him, obviously. It can't be good for the Broncos defense. It possibly could be good for the Broncos offense. More reason to chuck the ball more. So in that regard, maybe it's good. But I love Von Miller as just to me, he's a very TJ Watt kind of player. JJ Watt kind of player. Which one's on the Texans?
JJ.
Drink.
Water.
And there is the brain drink game. If I don't remember the player's name, you got to drink. All right. So, all right. That's that. Let's go over to Waiver Wire. Then we have some strategies and some games players we're watching closely this weekend. So, Waiver Wire strategies. Two biggest waiver wires I've seen out there, maybe the only two, I don't know, are Fab, free agency acquisition budget, and just your priority waiver wire where one guy has the first because he has the worst record on down until they kind of burn him up, that kind of thing. So they both have their benefits. I'm a personal fan of being able to bid money on it and see how it goes with your Fab. Makes it a little more even for teams so that the crappy team doesn't get all the good players. But then, hey, the crappy team deserves to get better players so they can chase at it. I get it. Whatever. I don't know. Real quick, just go around the room. Preference, Fab or priority waiver? Amaze?
Fab.
Mike?
Fab.
Beastie?
Fab.
Nice. Beastie's like, wait, what was the question? I don't know. They all said Fab. I'll say it too.
Yeah, just repeat what the other two said.
All right. So real quick, although one of you guys take this, when to use up your priority waiver wire, because you might not get another one for a while with the way that works. So when do you slap it down and say I'm going all in on this guy when in a non-Fab? Like some people will hold on to and they won't go after a waiver player because they don't want to give up that priority. You'll know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Anybody have any strategy there? Preference there? I've always been just if I want a guy, I go put in the bid. I don't give a damn, or put him on my waiver. But that's just my strategy.
Yeah, I've never been one to hang on to a high waiver wire priority. Let's say a lot of weird words and
right
succession there. Yeah, I'm with you. If I want a guy, go out and grab him. That's why Fab is my favorite because the whole league has the same opportunity to grab a guy. And I get the idea of priority waivers. If you're bad, you climb the list and everything. But in terms of, to answer your question, let's say I had the number one waiver priority for a few games and I'm not burning it. Other people are adding around me. I would save it until I had a position of absolute need that I saw a guy and the opportunity was right there. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt, I'm able to grab him when waivers clear, whenever that is, Wednesday morning, Tuesday morning, however it would be. So I would wait until it was an absolute priority at a specific position.
So I think the only caveat to that is when playing a super flex, that is when I hold on to the priority for as long as possible, waiting for that starting quarterback, a Nick Mullins or something like that to pop up.
Quarterback goes down for injury. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think in super flex, the priority is far more important. In one quarterback, yeah, grab the guy you need, but super flex, that becomes gold. I mean, the first time a quarterback goes down, you grab him, you either get a starting quarterback out of the deal or you sell it to the guy who just lost his for a lot more than you find on the waiver wire. So super flex is the only caveat I'll put on the priority list.
Yeah. I had a guy try and trade me Fab dollars for a waiver pickup just because I got the guy off waivers with my Fab dollars. I'm like, yeah, no, this isn't 7-Eleven like that. You're gonna pay me. All right. So Fab is a totally different story, though, totally different beast. There is more strategy that goes into Fab on the waiver wire. How do you guys? Let's just use your $100. Because usually it's 100 or 200 or sometimes 1,000, some kind of round number.
1,000.
Yeah, I was in a really deep Superflex IDP league that was that way. The dollars doesn't really matter because really you're just throwing down a portion of it. It's all
Yeah.
kind of relative. It matters at the end when you're down to the last dollar. But anybody got any strategies for Fab? Maybe go around the room for a quick strategy you have on your Fab. Because you're like, yeah, I pointed up, and you're like, well, am I on the top on his screen? I don't know.
No, you're right next to me.
Yeah,
You're right next.
he's above for me.
Yeah, but
it's funny.
yeah, I mean, I don't really. Gosh, I mean, for priority, I don't have a strategy. For Fab, I don't really have a strategy.
No.
My only biggest advice is to not really play the waiver wire in week 1 or week 2. I guess if you're prepping for week 2, because I don't want to be the guy that reacts quickly to, as I said before, John Ross goes off last year, week 1 for like 30 points. I don't want to be the guy that chases a potential week 1 darling and then he ends up not really being anything. I want to see who the people are that are being dropped. Like I mentioned, DeAndre Swift, if you're having to be dropped, guys like that who aren't performing. I want to see those guys. I want to pick them up cheap. Helps me save some Fab. And then as I go on down the line, down the season, I'll put a little bit here, a little bit there. But I really don't have a strategy. If I see somebody, I'll kind of just go for it.
Go for it. That's where the strategy is. That's where the strategy comes in. What does go for it mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of where you are in the season as well too. Yeah. Like if you find yourself with, if we're using $100, if you find yourself with $90 and it's week 11, like
yeah,
$90. But if it's like week 4, and so we'll use the example. So I've been pumping DeAndre Swift off of waivers. So if DeAndre Swift finds himself on the waivers, cut after week 3 because he has like 2 carries, my go for it scenario for that would probably be 65% for a player like that, somebody that I honestly believe in. If it's a Joe Mixon got hurt and he's out for a couple weeks, like we have this 3-week IR thing. Joe Mixon gets hurt, put on the 3-week IR. And then now Giovanni Bernard is the guy. My go for it in that scenario to hopefully buy a couple wins from a free starter would be about 25, 30%, maybe 35 if I really need them.
All right.
That's kind of my go for it.
I like it. P2W Fantasy says studs. Yeah, we love you, P2W. PW was just live streaming with you, Beastie, and I'll swing the question over to you.
Mine is a lot. That was very well said. Mine is a lot more elementary. I always do an odd number when I bid, just in case. Like let's play off the scenario. Mixon goes down, as he said. So Gio Bernard is the next guy up. If it's early on in the season and we know teams, other team owners have a ton of money in there, do I even throw my hat in the ring, or do I even try to guess what other teams are going to do? I'm more so I play just for like week to week basis, just those $1, $2 guys. Maybe I'll throw $3 on a guy I know people are only going to bid $1 and I can outbid by $1 or $2. Or in this case, Mixon is down, Giovanni Bernard's the guy. I would, as you said, I believe you said, 25 or 30%, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So then to antiquate that, so if you got $100, that's $35. I'll throw 37 or 43, just to try, odd numbers.
Try and get that buck over.
Yeah, absolutely. So mine is a lot more elementary than one would think, but I do love the idea of the percentages based on the total Fab that you have left, given the position that you need in terms of like an injury, let's say.
Mike, you got anything to add to there? I got one thing, but
yeah, I guess I'm probably a little bitter than these guys. I tend to do like almost 75-25. DeAndre Swift comes on the waiver wire. I'm putting down 75% plus. I'm getting my guy because let's just use the same scenario going all the way around. Mixon goes down. Everyone's bidding $30-something on Gio Bernard. I'm going to throw $2 on Travion Williams and roll the dice that way. So I'm really looking at that guaranteed scenario. Something happens to Kupp or Woods, I'm going to throw a big chunk of change on Van Jefferson, for example. Same with Chase Claypool if the situation changes in Pittsburgh. So if I have that guaranteed scenario guy or someone that I've had my eye on, DeAndre Swift's the perfect example. I'm going to make sure that guy's on my roster because you can always get those bye-week fill-in, even $0 bids pretty easily for a guy you can throw in there. But if I have someone that could take me to a championship, I'm just making sure that guy ends up in my roster. And that usually comes up to be about 75% on that guy and then 25% on the pieces I'm building my roster with later.
There you go. I try to save, even if I'm spending money, I try to save like 20% of whatever the budget is for the playoffs. Because come on now, we gotta be in the playoffs, and if something happens, then gotta be able to spend that money. Also, pay attention to your league though. If everybody else has spent their money, you don't have to worry about it so hard, right? Just like in an auction league. And then also, if you have if you're going, my wife had a player go to IR. Before I came on the show, and she moved him into the IR spot, and she was grabbing someone off waivers, and she put in a bid. I won't say how much in case someone else is watching, but she put in a bid. Gotta have some fun with it, man.
We're not that popular, are we? Jeez.
Hell yeah, we are. The only people watching is my mom. No. So anyway, if you, I like to put a bid in for 2 or 3 people. Dropping the same guy or for the same dollars in the order I want them. That way, if you don't get your guy that night and you have to fill a spot, you're not waiting until the next day to pick someone up. So this is a little extra tipski for you there. So pretty soon we're done talking about drafting players, right? There's a couple drafts going on. I hate drafting right before, like the night before type. I've had to do that before, hoping the commission did everything right and we actually get to bid or do our draft and things like that. But so we've done talking about drafts. Most people are done with that. Let's talk about setting a lineup. We get to do that joy soon. Some of us are setting one lineup. Some of us are setting 20 lineups, all kinds of fun things there. So setting a lineup isn't the trickiest thing in the world, but it's sometimes the most stressful thing in the world. So I'm trying to make it a little bit less stressful for people with maybe going around the horn, given maybe if you have any kind of, I called it methodology, but any way you approach setting a roster. Does it change based on your opponent? Does it change based on how many flexes? Do you take a different tactic if you have extra flex spots there versus if you have a more narrow roster? Does it change, your boom bust strategy? Does it change anything for you? Are you just grab the guy who should get the most points, call it a day? I'll start with you, Mr. Addison.
Yeah, so this is kind of something that I've been seeing more and more on Twitter, and people will talk about consistency, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, I don't want Amari Cooper because he has extremely hard bust weeks that are kill your lineup. But then, there's that other side of the coin where, Cooper was one of 15 or 13 wide receivers last year who had 8 top 24 or better weeks. One of 13 wide receivers, all 13 of those were top 15 guys at the end of the year. So, there is that correlation there between the guys who can have those spike weeks and be better on the end overall, at the end of the year than other guys who are, quote unquote consistent guys. Right.
Sure.
So that's why I'm really in on and kind of trying to kind of like reset and kind of reevaluate my methodology with having more of those boom kind of guys in my roster, because over a whole entire roster of players, your bust weeks actually don't hurt you as much as your boom weeks help you. Right. So, and over, a starting lineup of 8, 9, 10, Scott Fishbowl's 11 players, those bust weeks are kind of mitigated by having 10 other guys, kind of canceling out a 0 or a 2-point performance from Amari. So I'd rather take the shot on a guy who has that chance and opportunity to put up 25 as much as an opportunity to put up 0 than a guy who has a much, lower floor or lower ceiling, but like maybe a higher floor, So that's kind of where I've been trying to, like I said, reevaluate my strategy and how I'm building rosters when I'm drafting to set lineups and stuff for the season. And I know this doesn't really help now because we're already past drafting and we're setting lineups. But one thing that I've also been doing this summer that maybe this can help you going into next year is I've been trying to draft and acquire players in such a way that I can make the least amount of decisions on lineup when I'm setting my lineups, right? Because I know one of my weaknesses, I'm terrible at setting lineups, like in terms of like start sits, like this guy versus that guy, all that stuff. I always pick the worst guy. And the guy on my bench is always going off for 25, and the guy I started has 7. So that's always how it is. So I'm trying to set and work my rosters to be the least amount of decisions I possibly can. And usually that comes down to the wide receiver position. I want as little options and as little decisions as I can. And then the running backs is where I want to make my decisions, because generally, when running backs are going to be able to be playable, when you can start them, especially backups and stuff. When Kamara is out, Latavius is in. When Zeke is out, Tony Pollard is in, that kind of thing. So that's where I want to make my decisions, not so much at wide receiver.
I can dig that. I got my 2 dynasty teams are stacked at wide receivers, like super deep, good wide receivers, and I should get off my butt and trade some of them for some running backs. But you got shiny rocks. Got shiny rocks. Anyone else have any lineup strategies that matter to you? That looking at the week, where you're at in the season, opponents, anything like that.
What I've been doing for a long time, for years on end, actually, I have a method. I have it, actually, it's written down somewhere. I'm sure you can believe that, Bob, me writing down notes.
On one of those things?
On just little note cards and sticky notes and everything. So right off the bat, Monday morning, win or lose, I set my lineup based on my gut and the projections that the format, basically the site that I'm on, lays out. And as the week goes on, I do more research and with the projections and everything, and I go from there. I let it sit all week. I don't fool around with it. And then over the weekend, let's say Friday evening, if I'm available, or even Saturday night into Sunday morning, that's when I get down. Well, do I want to start this guy? Tinkering with your lineup is the worst thing you can do. Set it and leave it there all week, and then go back and revisit it, over the weekend when you have some free time, when you're not pressed for time and stressed out. Because most of the time, the gut calls that you made Monday morning will still stand after the lineup locks Sunday morning. So don't tinker. Trust your research. Trust your gut, and you got a good percentage of victory there if you do it that way. I'd like to think, at least.
All right. Well, you heard Detroit Beastie. He said no tinkering. Don't tinker. Mike, do you tinker? No, Mike. What's your tip?
I'm not much of a tinker. I try not to be, at least. The big tip, I guess, is just coming into week 1. Please don't look at the defenses right now. Set your lineup for the maximum amount of touches. That's what you're looking for this week. Perfect example is the Patriots. Historic defense last year. They're going to be run on. They already lost Chung and Hightower to opt-outs. This isn't the defense you saw last year. So what I love seeing is people avoiding certain matchups. Now, I'll agree. I'm going to load up on the Jags and Jets because I don't need to see them play to know what those defenses are going to look like. But overall, what I hate seeing is people making decisions based on the defensive efficiency from the year before. Sure. So much has changed. This season's going to look so much different. Go for maximum amount of touches. That's what I'm looking to do, is basically make sure that my guys are going to have the biggest opportunity to make a play. In order to do that, they have to be touching the ball. So I'm looking for, high impact running backs. People are going to grab the ball. I'm staying away from committees till they clean up. I know we talked about the Rams earlier as being an avoid at this point. As much as I like Akers on the end of my bench, he's not even seeing my starting lineup. Fournette's the perfect example of a guy who I think is definitely a good person to have on your roster, but he's not going anywhere near my week 1 lineup. The combination of not knowing the playbook, not knowing how they're going to use Ronald Jones. There's a lot there that makes me want to avoid that situation. So for week 1, don't worry too much about the defense, maximize the touches, and you'll be able to get your roster set up by, week 3 or 4, where you start to figure out who are those stud defenses, who are those defense that you're going to load up on, even as much as the tight end in Arizona. They've had a whole off season to try to fix that. I'm not certain that's going to be fantasy gold this year. It might, but I wouldn't be betting on that hard right out of the gate week 1.
All right, I love it. So you said week 1. Let's talk about week 1. What player situations are you watching closely this weekend, hoping for clarity? So this isn't really more of a discussion group. Maybe it is. It's just more of things that I found interesting. Maybe you guys have some that you find interesting as well. So I'm a big Singletary guy. I know I'm Singletary alone on that hill. I think I shook my whole camera system. But I want to see how they use Singletary and Moss, particularly around the goal line. Who gets the receptions? I figure it'll be more Singletary, but what happens around the goal line is the rook. They're going to hand it to the rook. They're going to keep their quarterback healthy. They're going to let Singletary have a little more trust, and hopefully he's done fumbling. That really didn't help the trust much, but so I want to see that scenario myself. Another one I want to see is the Eagles passing game. Is there going to be 12 personnel? Is Boston Scott getting some love out there? Is he split out wide? Somebody's got to catch the ball. Players are constantly hurt, so even the quarterback for that matter. But that's two of mine right off the top. What player scenarios are you guys watching games closely for?
I'm most excited, and I wanted to go first because I didn't want you guys to steal it because it's pretty certain. What's Jonathan Taylor going to do in Jacksonville this week? Indianapolis is a heavy favorite there. They're projected, 26, 27 points over Jacksonville's 17 or so. So we don't think it's going to be a close game. Jacksonville's going to be horrible for the long term, specifically this season. What's going to happen there? My other concern and question was how is Swift going to be used in Detroit? But that's already done and over with. That's already been put to bed in terms of how Swift and carry on now that AP is there and Swift has missed time. But me again, it's Jonathan Taylor and Mack, Nyheim Hines. How are they going to use the three of them? It seems in a perfect world, I'd like to think that Nyheim Hines would be unaffected. Like he could take on that James White kind of role in Indianapolis with with Phil there now. So that would be between the rookie Jonathan Taylor, who everybody's just been in love with. Actually, you either love him or you hate him. There's been no in between I've seen over the last few months on Twitter. I'm indifferent to the whole thing. I am a JT owner, and I'm very excited to see how it shakes out. I mean, for months now, they've absolutely just buried Marlon Mack there. And I don't think that's the case. And we're finally we're not going to get all the answers on Sunday, but we're going to start to see some of them. Again, it's week one. I see a scenario where teams across the league, they use this first week kind of, not to sound crazy, but they use week one as like a preseason kind of thing. See how some of these position camp battles are going to shake out. Let's give Jonathan Taylor a series. Then let's give Mack a series, and we'll just go back and forth and see how these guys handle it. And then we'll have this time next week, we should have some answers, but not all the answers, if that makes sense.
Okay, I like it. One of you other guys, give me a scenario two that you're looking at.
Yeah, so I know we touched on it earlier, but I really want to see how they use Laviska Shenault. Where is he going to be lined up? How many plays they're going to look to get the ball in his hands. I have no doubt that DJ Chark is going to see a ton of targets. If you watched any of the Foles or Minshew highlights on NFL Network, literally they threw it to Chark every play. And I love the guy. I just think Shenault is one of those new age weapons. This kid can run the ball. He can catch. I want to see how they utilize him. They do have a weak backfield. They're going to be behind in games. I think we can say that fairly certainly, regardless of what I just said about week one. I'm fairly positive the Jags are going to be awful. So I want to see how they get involved in the offense. So that's the big one. And then the second one for me is Washington. I think the comedy of naming J.D. McKissick the starter, that was one of my favorite tweets of the day. We know that's not going to happen, but you've heard some positive talk on Love. Obviously, Gibson is the darling, and I don't know if you guys have heard this, but he didn't have a ton of touches in college. I know that's a new stat that people have.
He only had 33, if I'm not mistaken. That's all I've heard.
Is that the number? I haven't heard it too many times, so I don't have it etched in my brain. But the big thing you saw was AP leaving Washington, going to Detroit. One of the things he stated was that Washington wants to go with one guy, and they drafted Gibson to be that guy. So this is somebody with no stake in the game anymore, saying that essentially Gibson's the guy. But obviously, before you can put him in your lineup, you want to see that. He's not a guy, no matter how many shares I have him, no matter how many times I'm rostered, he's not a guy I'm comfortable putting in week one, but very well could be an absolute stud from week two on if they use him properly. So Shenault and Gibson, these kind of Swiss Army knife players coming out in the draft, those are the two that I'm most interested in watching for week one.
And then over to you, Addison.
Yeah, the only one that I had in here was kind of a team that I feel like I understand, and I think I've kind of figured out what they're going to do this year. But really, I just want my priors to be confirmed here with this Rams offense. I want to see the 12 personnel that they used at the end of last year that really gave Goff and the offense. It was very successful. Goff over the last, I believe, 5 or 6 games, never threw for less than 280 yards and 2 touchdowns in a single game. That's when Tyler Higbee was going off on pace for like 1,600 yards or something like that. And Robert Woods was going off. Cooper Kupp was doing fine because he was getting saved by touchdowns. But really, I think I have this Rams team kind of figured out, I think. And I think Goff is going to be a good candidate for a breakout kind of performance. I think Woods is going to be great. I think Kupp's going to be solid. Higbee should do well. I want to see what they do with Gerald Everett, because like I said, if they're running 12 personnel, Higbee and Everett should both be out there at the same time. And then I think even though a lot of people are excited about Darrell Henderson, I think Cam Akers takes that backfield. I would be excited to see that because he's an explosive player as well. But if it ends up being both of them, that's fine by me too, because I don't really have all too many shares of that backfield, even though, like I said, I think I have that team figured out.
All right.
So can we find out who they play the 12 personnel? Who's the tight end you want on that team? Higbee or Everett?
With 12 or with 11?
With both Everett and Higbee on the field, who are you going with?
Higbee.
Right.
Higbee.
That's been seem to be splitting people. I'm Higbee as well, but that seems to be a big argument right now.
I think the bigger issue is if they go 11, are they rotating them out, or are they just keeping one in? And if they got one guy dominating, that's a trickier part to me, because they're both capable, as they both proved last year in their own time slots. So that's the trickier part to me. So that my question is more the opposite spectrum. Well, it was, and then I lost the train of thought there. But Giants receiving options, all 5 of them. Dallas receiving options, all 5 of them. When I say 5, I'm talking about the running back, the tight end, 3 wide receivers. All of them can do it. It's muddy and messy. Don't try and say those 2 words at the same time. And it's going to be tricky to figure out who's the guy. I feel like Dallas, you can tell easy. The Giants receiving options, they didn't ever play together. Not that, they all did in Dallas either because they got rookies. But they didn't all play together last year with the Giants. It'd be fun to see who is going to be the man there. Like, I love Slayton. But there's no room for Slayton to be consistent if the other guys are on the field and he doesn't edge them out. He's great for a boom game. So I'm not putting him in my lineup because unlike Base Hayes, I can't do that. maybe it's my third flex. I don't know. Green Bay, number 2 wide receiver. Is there going to be one? Is one going to emerge, or is it just be a hodgepodge of whoever? Is
Alan Lazard?
I don't know. Hey, I like Lazard too, but will he be? Will he be? That's the trick. All right. Let's talk about what games we're looking forward to watching this weekend. I'd be lying if I didn't say Tennessee versus the Broncos, Monday night, late night misery. They're only scheduled to score 41 points, and we just lost Von Miller, so that doesn't help.
Hurts.
So kind of sad about that one. Big fan of the Houston KC game. That should be blow up in points. That should be a lot of fun to watch. And then who can ever argue with Seattle versus Atlanta? That just smells like a fun game. Like, you want some points? I want some points. Come on, let me cook. So, all right, that's my games I'm looking forward this weekend. MF, as you put in the show notes here.
All right, so the big ones for me, I'm really looking forward to Miami, New England. Flores, Belichick. What are we going to get out of the return of Cam? I can't wait to see Preston Williams take the field. I think he's going to absolutely eat this year. But the big thing is, I think New England. It's a narrative. It's not a projection or numbers based, but an angry Cam Newton and an angry Bill Belichick, I think are going to surprise some teams. And the next one up, I have Arizona at San Francisco. San Francisco coming off Super Bowl hangover, taking a look at the ascension of Kyler Murray. Obviously, they got him his big weapon who just signed a monster contract, so I want to see what they can do. I think that game's going to be a little closer than it's projected. It looks like they have San Francisco at -7 right now. I think it's going to be a little tighter game than expected, so I'm looking forward to those two for this week.
Okay. And over to you, Detroit Beastie.
Well, what kind of football fan would I be if the Lions-Chicago game wasn't the one I'm most excited to see? I'd be.
I got my Broncos game in there. Don't worry about it.
All my credibility would be tossed to the curb. I'm excited to see Stafford back again with Kenny G, Marvin Jones. What's TJ Hawk about? He's been lifting weights with George Kittle all summer. He's a beefcake now. We've seen all the photos. What the heck is going to go down? On paper, the Lions should mop the floor with Chicago now that Trubisky is their quarterback, but I can't say that because the Chicago fan will say, well, Trubisky threw 6 touchdowns in 2 games against the Lions last year. So I know it's not a sexy pick, but it's my pick. It's my hometown team, born and raised in the city. I love my Lions. I'd do anything for them. And one of these years, something's got to happen, right? So I'm most excited to see the Lions at home against the Chicago Bears. I sent in $150, so I have a cardboard cutout of myself at Ford Field all season. I will be there.
Nice. And TJ Hawkabout, was that a slip, play on words, or was that a new thing you're calling him, TJ Hawkabout? Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I completely didn't even know I did that, but that's how nicknames and funny little quibs are made. TJ Hawkabout it.
There you go. All right, over to you, Addison.
Yeah, I got 2 games. The first one, if we're all going to be homers here, listen, Pittsburgh Steelers, the comeback player of the year, Ben Roethlisberger, is going to be back. They go take on the New York Giants, and I'm excited to see Ben come back. I'm excited to see him target the crap out of Juju Smith-Schuster, the return of 2018 Juju. James Conner is healthy. He's the bell cow back. He's going to get like 20 touches. I'm here for it. And then, we already kind of mentioned that Giants offense that when all of those guys are healthy, we never saw it last year. They are all healthy, all 5 of them. Saquon Barkley, again, hometown guy, Penn State. Love the dude. I'm excited to see what that offense can do because it can be pretty lethal with all of those guys there. Daniel Jones taking another step forward. I'm excited to see that kind of go down. Plus, if they can perform against a solid Pittsburgh Steelers defense, I think that's pretty good signs for the 2020 New York Giants offense. And then the other one, I'm honestly surprised we haven't talked about it yet. Tampa Bay versus New Orleans. The GOATs. Tom Brady's first game goes up against who I believe is the GOAT, Drew Brees. I think
there it is.
I think that is going to be a fantastic game. Both of their defense are kind of meh. Both offenses are very super powered. I think it's going to be really, really fun. Gronk is back as well, too. What is Leonard Fournette? Kamara should be out there. Michael Thomas. They added Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook. This should be a really, really fun and high-powered offensive game for us to watch.
All right. Explain yourself, Mike. You shook your head so hard I thought your headset was going to fall off.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you want to call Drew Brees the GOAT, I mean, yeah, garbage time yards, I guess, do count for fantasy. But if we're playing real football, we're going to look at some rings here. But yeah, no, the GOAT is playing in that game. It's just not Drew Brees. I hope we know that. The other thing I'll take exception with is if he throws one pass here, man, Ben has no chance at comeback player of the year because the award goes directly to Alex Smith if he steps foot on that football field this year. Though I am really excited to see Ben come back and see what he can do in that offense.
Fair. That's always fun.
I thought we were going to pick on Amaze Hayes because I think that Ben doesn't have a chance either. I think it's all here in Detroit with Stafford, but then I'd look like a jerk voting against Alex Smith because the guy that's absolutely amazing that he's absolutely, cleared to play football again. I thought we were going to have some sort of, pick on Amaze Hayes section, but I guess we all have our own opinion then. I believe it'll be Stafford.
Detroit Dave wanted to step in and support you here. He says, Drew Brees slander must stop. There you go. Got tagged in from the sidelines, from the other side of the ropes.
I will give you Drew Brees is better than Aaron Rodgers if you want that. Just don't come at Brady.
That's easy, bro.
If you want that.
Golly, give me something harder.
Nice. All right. So good stuff. All right. So here's the last section here. If you were a betting man, what games would you go with? Since betting is all the rage these days and legal in so many places in this world, including America, where would you? What games are you betting on? We'll start with you, Mike.
So the one I
Go ahead.
Yeah, one I pulled out here was Dallas -3 at the Rams. Not necessarily the greatest line. I think Addison's going to nail that with his first pick. But realistically, what I wanted to highlight here was just the difference in home field advantage, given the current situation with COVID. I think whenever you're gambling, you want to take advantage of situations and variables. And I think in this case, you're going to have a home field advantage be a lot different than what we've seen in the past. So taking a look at those road teams really closely, Addison pointed out in the pre-show that obviously travel still comes in, looking at the jet lag. When you're talking about a Dallas trip to LA, nobody in the stands, not that there were last year, but you know what I mean? All of these situations where you're going to what used to be a big home field advantage because of the crowd just being limited to background noise that you're going to have very similar across the board. I think road teams are going to pay out nicely until we adjust those lines a little stronger towards being even. I mean, it's not the same as the bubble sports where you have with hockey and basketball where it's completely even, but it's a lot closer than it's been in years past. So just take a look at those road teams real closely when you're setting up those bets and parlays.
Yeah, don't forget also that those road teams that are traveling, they often like to go out and have a good time. Well, with COVID, they're probably going to be stuck in their hotels bored. They're going to be fresh coming out to that game. No, just kidding. A little narrative street for you. So my betting man is I'm not. So I forego that whole section because I'm not anti-betting. I just I've never called them well. I've tried to do the pick'em things at the each season, and I'm like, okay. All right, over to you, Detroit. You got a game you throw a couple bucks down on if you were betting?
I have several I can run through real quick. I mean, the lock of the day is Seattle at Atlanta, the over, right? I mean, the over's at 49. And looking at the slate, that's the highest over-under we have. Well, actually, excuse me, Houston at Kansas City, over-under is 54. Holy crap. So I'm still going the over at Seattle and Atlanta. I love Philly -6 in Washington. Green Bay at Minnesota. I love the under. The under's at 45.5. Those two teams from the north, they beat the hell out of each other. So I'm going under there. And I like Arizona on the road +7 in San Francisco.
Okay. All right. I got a little scared when you said you had a couple. I'm like, oh, don't take one of Addison's. All right, your turn, Addison.
Yeah, I got two in here, and I live in a state where betting is legal, so I'm out here drafting on DraftKings, doing all that stuff. It's really fun. I'm ready to get into it because Pennsylvania legalized it like in week 9 last year. And I'm like, but yeah. So this week, I should say the first one that I went through, I was just scrolling through all this stuff. And the first one I found was the Bills are 6.5 point favorites against the Jets. And I think that one's pretty easy because I think I can confidently say that the Jets are going to be terrible. That Bills defense is going to lock them down. And then what's even worse, the Jets lost their best defensive player in Jamal Adams. So, with the addition of Stephon Diggs, I think Josh Allen, who I think is a low-key kind of favorite of mine for an MVP caliber season, I think he has the potential to do it. I don't know if he actually does it, but I think he has the potential to do it. With an improved offense around him, he gets a little bit better in accuracy. I think he can do that. So that one's an easy one there for me. The second one is an underdog pick. I got the money line and the spread here for this one is Carolina against the new Las Vegas Raiders. I think that one could actually be kind of a surprise to some people, seeing Carolina come out starting off the season 1-0. But that offense is like sneaky talented and pretty lethal as well too. When you think about Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, they added Robbie Anderson. Teddy Bridgewater comes in and is like 3 times better than anything they had at quarterback last year. Matt Rule, Joe Brady, all that stuff. I actually looked last year. The Carolina Panthers had 5 games last year over 30 points. And the Oakland Raiders, then the Oakland Raiders, and now Las Vegas Raiders, only had 2. So that kind of speaks to, I think, the ability for the Carolina Panthers offense to kind of show out and perform and do really well offensively. You know, Christian McCaffrey can score wherever. DJ Moore can score wherever. So I'm taking the Carolina Panthers as underdog moneyline favorites and that spread since I'm taking them to win too.
All right. So last comment before we go around the room and give all our handles and all that good stuff. Detroit Dave threw one more comment. His last comment, he says, based off shortened off season, no preseason games, do you expect more unders? Me personally, I think you're going to have a good chance of sloppy offense and a good chance of sloppy defense. And if you ever play in a game that has sloppy defense, that means lots of broken plays for big touchdowns. And sloppy offense just means more chance for fumbles, interceptions, taken for shorter drives the other way. So to me, it kind of lends itself to heck, I might even say more overs. But that's just me and not really knowing the over-under world. How about you guys?
So my only change in betting based off a shortened offseason and no preseason is going heavier on teams that have been more established, teams that have less turnover. So I'm staying away from, for example, like the Bucks, the Pats we talked about earlier, until we find out what they are. But those teams that are returning everybody, the Chiefs are a perfect example of that. Yeah, betting big on them. Yeah, they have a massive advantage. Baltimore's a great one. Yeah, that I think is really where if you want looking for an advantage, I don't think it's in the over/under. I think it's in going after those teams that have not been established and haven't had time to really gel.
Sure. Anybody else a differing opinion before we depart? No? All right. I like it. So we'll go around the room one more time before we head out. We'll remind everybody where your work can be found, what you got going on, and then go same direction. Addison, over to you.
Yeah, so all my work is at DLF. I've been working on some in-season tools and stuff on there. I do a lot of the stuff programming-wise for all their tools. All free right now. I don't know when the plans are to put them behind a paywall, if there are any, but definitely go check those out. And then I have a weekly in-season article dropping every Monday for Dynasty waiver wires on DLF. So you can find all that on DLF, Dynasty League Football, and you can find me on Twitter at AmazeHaze_.
Down to you, Mike.
Mike Fiala. You can find my writing at the Pregame HQ. Shout out to Elvin and the group over there. And you can find me on Twitter at mfiala2001. That is MFAIELLA 2001. Absolutely love catching up with people there. Try to get to all your comments as best I can. So hopefully we can catch up and talk some football.
All right, Detroit Beastie. Last but certainly not least.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Detroit Beastie. Bottom of the barrel is my big DFS article. Look for that to be published. And on your Twitter machine or any social media or at dfscheatsheet.com by every Monday, my weekly rankings will be up and on Fantasy Pros no later than Tuesday. Each week throughout the season, you can DM me, find me on Facebook, any way you want to do. I'm like Mike. I love chatting and catching up with anybody. What's the point of doing this if we're not supporting and loving each other and spreading our wealth of knowledge? It's no use to me, stuck here in my own head.
There you go. A little scary place in there anyway, right?
Oh, it's so bad.
All right. So I completely appreciate you guys coming on, those watching and those listening on the replay. Appreciate you doing that. I am Bob's Three Toed on Twitter, Bob's Three Toed Warriors on the YouTubes, Word on the Streets Fantasy Football Group on Facebook. And shows can be found pretty much all week except Mondays at this point, really. Starting, well, hey, you never know. You never know. Might happen. We'll see. I want to stay married, though. So that's it for now. And absolutely, but saying all off season long, soon enough, you'll be able to hit the waiver wire, set your lineups, and dominate your opponents. Until then, see you. Football time, baby!